Namo Narayana, welcome back to the second of 3 videos on the Mandala Brahmana Upanishad. Today, looking at part 2. Let's dive right in. Then Yajnavalkya asked the Purusha in the sphere of the sun, O Lord, Antar Lakshya has been described many times, but it has never been understood by me clearly. Pray, describe it to me. The Purusha replied, It is the source of the 5 elements, has the luster of many streaks of lightning, and has 4 seats, having or rising from Brahman. In its midst there arises the manifestation of Tattva. It is very hidden and unmanifested. It can be known only by one who has got into the boat of jhana. It is the object of both Bahir and Antar, that being external and internal. Lakshyas. In its midst is absorbed the whole world. It is the vast, partless universe beyond Nada, Bindu, and Kala. Above it, in the sphere of Agni, is the sphere of the sun. In its midst is the sphere of the nectary moon. In its midst is the sphere of the partless Brahma Tehas, or the spiritual effulgence of Brahma. It has the brightness of white light, like the ray of lightning. It alone has the characteristic of Sambhavahi. In seeing this, there are 3 kinds of sight: the new moon, the first day of lunar fortnight, and the full moon. The sight of Amma, the new moon, is the one seen with closed eyes. That with the half-opened eyes is Pratipat, or the first day of the lunar fortnight, while that with the fully opened eyes is the full moon, or Purnima. Of these, the practice of Purnima should be resorted to. Its aim is the tip of the nose. Then is seen a deep darkness at the root of the palate. By practicing this, a light of the form of an endless sphere is seen. This alone is Brahma, the Sakshatananda. When the mind is absorbed in bliss thus naturally produced, then does Sambhavi take place. Sambhavi alone is called Kikchari. By practicing it, a man attains firmness of mind. Through it he obtains firmness of Vayu. The following are the signs. First, it is seen like a star. Then a reflecting or a dazzling of a diamond. Then the sphere of full moon. Then the sphere of brightness of 9 gems. Then the sphere of the midday sun. Then the sphere of the flame of Agni. All these are seen in order. Then there is the light in the western direction of the second stage. Then the lustres of crystal, smoke, Bindu, Nada, Kala, star, firefly, lamp, eye gold, and 9 gems, etc. are seen. This alone is the form of Pranava. Having united Prana and Apana, and holding the breath in Kumbhaka, one should fix his concentration at the tip of his nose, and making Shanmukhi with the fingers of both his hands, one hears the sound of Om, in which manas become absorbed. Such a man has not even the touch of karma. The karma is of daily prayers is verily performed at the rising or setting of the sun. As there is no rising or setting, but only ever shining of the sun, of the conception of day and night, through the annihilation of sound and time, he becomes one with Brahma, through the all-full jnana and the attaining of the state of Unmani, the state above the manas. Through the state of Unmani, he becomes Amanaska, or without manas. Not being troubled by any thoughts of the world, then constitutes the dhyana. The abandoning of all karmas constitutes avahana, the invocation of God. Being firm in the spiritual wisdom constitutes asana. Being in the state of unmani constitutes the padya, or the offering of water for washing the feet of God. Preserving the state of amanaska, when manas are offered as a sacrifice, constitutes the agriya, or the offering of water as oblation generally. Being in state of eternal brightness and shoreless nectar constitutes snana, bathing. The contemplation of Atman as present in all constitutes sandal. The remaining, in the real state of the spiritual eye, is akshata, or the attaining of consciousness is the worshipping with flour. The real state of Agni, of Chit, is the dupa, the burning of incense. The state of the sun of Chit is the Dipa, the light waved before the image. The union of oneself with the nectar of full moon is the offering of food, Naivedya. The immobility in that state, that being the ego being one with all, is Pradakshina, going round the image. The conception of I am he is Namaskara, prostration. The silence, then, is the Shuddhi, the praise. The all-contentment, or serenity, is Visatjana, giving leave to God, or finishing the worship. He who knows this, knows all. When the Triputi are thus dispelled, he becomes the Kaivalya Jyotis, without existence or non-existence, full and motionless, like the ocean without the tides, or like the lamp without the wind. He becomes a knower Brahma by cognizing the end of the sleeping state even while in the waking state. Though the same mind is absorbed in Sushupati, as also in Samadhi, there is much difference between them. In the former case, as the mind is absorbed in tamas, it does not become the means of salvation, but in samadhi, as the modifications of tamas in him are rooted away, the mind raises itself to the nature of the partless. All that is no other than Sakshi Chaitanya, or wisdom consciousness, into which the absorption of the whole universe takes place, inasmuch as the universe is but a delusion or creation of the mind, and is therefore not different from it. Though the universe appears perhaps as outside of the mind, still it is unreal. He who knows Brahman, and who is the sole enjoyer of Brahmanic bliss, which is eternal and is dawned once for all in him, that man becomes one with Brahman. He in whom Sankalpa perishes has got mukti in his hand. Therefore one becomes an emancipated person through the contemplation of Paramatman. Having given up both bhava and abhava, one becomes a jiva mukta by leaving off again and again in all stages of wisdom and object of wisdom, meditation and object of meditation, aim and non-aim, visible and non-visible, reasoning and negative reasoning. He who knows this knows all. There are 5 states: waking, dreaming, dreamless state, the 4th, and that beyond the 4th. The ego is engaged in the waking state and becomes attached to the worldly path, and is the particular of hell as the fruit of sins. He desires heaven as the fruit of his virtuous actions. This very same person becomes indifferent to all these, saying, enough of the births tending to actions, the fruit of which tend to bondage till the end of his mundane existence. Then he pursues the return path with a view to obtain emancipation. And this person then takes refuge in a spiritual master in order to cross this mundane existence. Giving up passion and others, he does only those he has asked to do. Then, having acquired the 4 means to salvation, he attains, in the middle of the lotus of his heart, the reality of Antarlaksha, that is but the Sat of Lord, and begins to recognize the bliss of Brahma, which he had left in his Sushupti state. At last he attains this state of discrimination, thus thinking, I think I am the non-dual one only. I was in Ajnana for some time, in the waking state, and called therefore Vishva. I became somehow a Taijasa in the dreaming state, through the reflection of the affinities of the forgotten waking state, and now I am a Prajna through the disappearance of those two states. Therefore, I am one only. I appear as more than one through the difference of state and place, and there is nothing of differentiation of class beside me. Having expelled even the smack of difference between I and that through the thought, I am the pure and the secondless Brahman, and having attained path of salvation, which is the nature of Para-Brahman, after having become one with it through the dhyana of the sun sphere as shining with himself, he becomes fully ripened for getting salvation. Sankalpa and others are the causes of the bondage of the mind, and the mind devoid of these becomes fit for salvation. Possessing such a mind free from all, and withdrawing himself from the outer world of sight and others, and so keeping himself out of the odor of the universe, he looks upon all the world as Atman, abandons the conception of I, thinks I am Brahman, and considers all these as Atman. Through these, he becomes one who has done his duty. The yogin is one that has realized Brahman, that is all full beyond Turiya. People extol him as Brahman, and becoming the object of the praise of the whole world, he wanders over different countries, placing the Bindu in the Akasha of Paramatman, and pursuing the path of the partless bliss produced by the pure secondless, stainless, and inmate yoga sleep of a Manaska. He becomes an emancipated person. Then the yogin becomes immersed in the ocean of bliss. When compared to it, the bliss of Indra and others is very little. He who gets this bliss is the supreme yogin. Thus ends part 2. And that was a very tough I don't have the word. That was very tough. And which is why so many of these Upanishads are just, people just don't want to read them. It's just like gibberish on some level. It's not, but it's hard to work through, and the words and the writing, and it's tough. The one thing I will say is, I think it's worth it to read it, because you do kind of pick up on little ideas that you've seen elsewhere. I know, I see something here and I'm like, oh yeah, I've picked that up elsewhere. So you do begin to see this big picture. What is interesting about this Upanishad, and many others, is if you can weed through what it says, it is giving you very specific outlines of this path to salvation. Very specific. It is telling you exactly what's happening. And you know those, let's say, New Age gurus, or I know someone who calls something Los Angeles gurus, or folks who suddenly were self-realized. They were just sitting there with their cup of coffee, watching the sun set, and suddenly they're like, oh, yeah, I'm self-realized now. I don't consider them to be true gurus. They're not scriptural, they're not traditional, they're not authentic for me. They're not based here, they don't have a lineage. It's something else. It's a spiritual experience in my book, but it doesn't suddenly make you a guru. It's a bit of self-delusion and maybe some attention-getting. That's beside the point. But you can check them with this. That's the point. If they say, oh, well, I just achieved this and I had this. Okay. Did you experience X, Y, and Z? Did you experience this, this, and this? They're probably going to say no. So you go, okay, well, why not? And they may give you many, many answers. Who knows? They may not be talking to you at this point. They may think you're horrible. But if they answer you, they may say, well, I didn't need that. So you didn't need a text written thousands of years ago that is by a great sage, and that speaks of truth that is validated in other texts. So you skip the whole message of God thing? That's like realizing Jesus, but you don't need the Bible. Or, I don't know, worshipping Allah, but you don't need the Quran and you don't need the Prophet. You're just like, really? This is your test. And this test has been, as I said in the beginning, you may not get what this is saying, but you see this in other places. So it's the same ideas. So if you dismiss this, you're dismissing a lot of it. This is your test to see if these gurus you meet are truly there. Or if they've just experienced something and suddenly they decided they're a guru because of just an experience. Or to put it this way, they're walking up a set of stairs to go to the second floor. They get to the middle of the stairs and they go, I've achieved the second floor now. Look at how high up I am. But they haven't. They haven't. And they try to live in that second floor, but it's a really small step, so they never really go anywhere. Don't be like that. my criticism, excuse me, if you're one of those people, feel free to rip me down below. But if you're watching this channel, I don't think you are. I think you've realized that there is more to this world. So I want to bring your attention to one little bit that I thought was so absolutely cool. It's discussing, I'd have you go back, I'd say like the third section, third paragraph or whatever. It's discussing how the states of states of things are like consciousness and agony and the union of oneself are all equated with different aspects of worship. So worship with fire and circumambulating and the rice that we offer and the flowers that we offer. I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. I never really thought about how each part of this offerings that we do, whatever your God is, or, you know, whether you're doing it at home or in a temple, the incense and the flower, how each one of those might actually have a relationship to some stage of realization or some stage of new awareness. It's just like, wow, that is so, I don't want to say it's so high up there in secret knowledge, but it's something that I don't think I've ever seen referenced. Yeah, I'm kind of drawing a blank. I don't think I've ever seen that, and that blows that's a huge mind blower. Which tells you a lot of people aren't reading this Upanishad, because I would think everybody would want that. That would be unbelievable. To know that this is all tied in and connected is amazing. It's just, it makes these little movements of just waving the incense have so much more meaning than we currently give them. They're not just, gods like smells, so give them smells. And that's what I was told. Gods like smells, so thus that's why we have the incense. I was told you could use anything, you know. It doesn't have to be incense. But this is more than that. This isn't saying that God likes smells. This says that incense represents so much more. And yeah, wow. This part of that Upanishad was the one part I really was able to swallow, because so much of this was complex, but that part alone is like mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. It makes me want to go and rearrange my shrine right now, matter of fact. Actually, I just bought a new statue of Ganesha. I have Vishnu, Lakshmi, Krishna, Ganesha, and Shiva, and that I've bought over the years at different times. And my Ganesha was the very first one I ever bought, and I wasn't really practicing, and it was cheap, and his arm is broken off so many times I literally can't glue it on anymore. So I just bought a new one. But reading this makes me excited for when that arrives in the mail, and wanting to just, you know, clean things up and redo things on my little household shrine with places for the rice and the flour, etc. Anyways, thoughts, comments down below, as always, and we'll get the last 2 sections to this in the next video. So thank you for watching, thank you for hanging out with all my rambles, and yeah. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,